Hi everyone! In this video, I will show you how to access multiple GitHub accounts in the same computer using ssh-agent. Our main goal is to do that in Windows, but the steps are basically the same for Mac and Linux. You can extend this solution to work with GitLab as well. This setup is very useful. For example, if you work remotely for different clients like me, or want to separate your personal and work accounts. If you still don't know what is SSH, it means Security Shell or Security Socket Shell. It's a protocol that provides a secure way to connect to remote servers, authenticate users, and do data transferring. So let's get started. I hope you enjoy. The first thing we will do is to enable the OpenSSH service. One of the components of this service is the ssh-agent. The agent is responsible for managing the SSH keys and remembering the passphrase used for them. As the passphrase is not mandatory, this step is not strictly necessary, but we want to do it to enhance security. Now, let's generate the SSH key pairs for each of our GitHub accounts. For that, we are going to use the command ssh keygen with my user1 and user2 accounts. The option T specifies the type of the key to create. Here we are using the ED25519, which is the most recommended public key algorithm available today. The C option is to provide a custom key comment, the email in our case, which will be appended at the end of the public key. A default file name is suggested, but instead of just press enter, we are going to type a more meaningful name so we can differentiate the files used for each account. The passphrase is an additional layer of security applied to a private key. It's used to encrypt the private key. So it should follow the same best practice we use for creating a password. When accessing the GitHub account, we will need to enter the passphrase only for the first time. As we have enabled the ssh-agent, the passphrase will be cached by it and automatically used from now on. Let's repeat these steps for the second account. The command ssh keygen generates a pair of files. The one without extension is the private key, and the one with the extension .pub is the public key. Now, let's move these files to the .ssh directory in the home directory, which is the user directory. If you don't have the .ssh directory, you can create it now. Let's look at the key files. The private key should be kept securely on our local computer. It should never be shared with others. The public key is derived from the corresponding private key using that mathematical algorithm we choose when generating the keys. It is intended to be shared with others or made available to servers. So let's copy it and go to GitHub. Click in your photo, then click Settings. In the left side menu, click SSH and GPG keys. Click New SSH key, fill the title, and paste the public key. Take care here to not use any additional characters, and then click Add SSH key. Keep in mind, you need to repeat this for your another GitHub account. Let's go back to our computer. We need to create a ssh config file in the .ssh directory. Keep in mind that the tilde symbol is a shortcut to your user directory. Note that this config file has no extension. The host option is used to specify configuration settings for a specific host or a group of hosts. The value of this option will be used when we want to connect to GitHub. The hostname option specifies the remote server's address we want to connect. The user option specifies the username to be used. In our case, we are using Git because it's the default user used by GitHub in SSH connections. The identity file option specifies the private key file to be used for authentication when connecting to the remote host identified by hostname. The identities only option specifies whether the client should use only the identities explicitly specified with the identity file option. So, if the authentication agent provides any additional identities, they will be ignored. If you prefer to use Git Bash on Windows, like me, you need to add a line in the bash config file. This file can be found in your user directory. If it does not exist, you can create it. This is to make Bash look first at the OpenSSH directory for SSH commands. After that, you need to restart your Git Bash terminal. Now, we can add the private keys to the ssh-agent. For that, we are using the command ssh-add. This enables use the private key for SSH authentication without entering the passphrase each time. Let's try to authenticate in our GitHub accounts. The option T is to disable terminal allocation. We don't want to open a terminal to do interactive commands, but just test our connection. And the option V means verbose, providing more detailed output during our SSH connection. Then, we need to use the host we used in our config file. So, it seems everything is looking good so far. Now, we need to add a git config file for each account. Let's start opening the global git configuration file in the home directory. For that, we are using the command git config. The user section contains the default Git user information. Use the name and email you want to associate with the default Git account. The include if sections specify conditional includes based on the location of the Git repository. In our case, we are using gitdir to specify different configurations based on the directory. You can modify the path to match your specific directory structure and name conventions. The other settings I have here are the default branch, is the branch name to be used when using Git init. The auto-carry-as-you-return line feed is to help collaboration between members using Windows, Mac, and Linux. This is because Windows uses carry-as-you-return and line feed to end lines, while Mac and Linux use only line feed. The default editor, in my case, the Visual Studio. And then we have the SSH command. When this option is set, git fetch and git push will use the specified command to connect to a remote system. In our case, we want to use the SSH command from OpenSSH. But keep in mind that if you have the git ssh command environment variable set, Git will use it instead of this configuration. The next step is to create the git config file for each account matching the name we used here. In each file, we are adding the user section to match the accounts we are using. Note the ssh command option in the core section. Here, the option I is to inform the identity file to be always used by the ssh command. And if you want, you can override any other settings we have in the Git global configuration file. Now, let's check if our settings are working properly. One way to organize the repositories in our computer is to create a directory named GitHub and inside it one specific directory for each account. You can do the same if you are working with GitLab as well. Let's go to GitHub to get our SSH repository URL. Git is the protocol used for communication. Here, an SSH URL. GitHub.com is the host name of the GitHub server. That's the part we need to change to clone our repository. From dev to dev is the username, our account in GitHub. After the slash, we have the name of the repository and the suffix git to indicate it's a Git repository. Now let's copy the URL and go back to our terminal. To clone the repository, we need just to replace the default hostname github.com by the respective host in the ssh config file. In this case, github.user1. Note that the repository has been cloned without asking for the passphrase. Just to be sure, let's do the same steps to clone a repository from my other accounts. Yes, we are all good here. Before we finish this video, let me show you how you can fix the repositories you have cloned before setting all this. First, let's check the remote URL of the repository we have just cloned using the command git remote get URL. Note that the URL is already set for our customized hostname. If you want to have more detailed information, you can use the command git remote show and the name of the remote repository. Now, let's check the URL from another repository I was working before this setup. Note that the URL is using github.com. To fix that, we are going to use the command git remote set URL. This command changes URLs for the remote. So we need to replace github.com by our customized hostname. Now let's check the remote URL again and do a git pull just to confirm everything is okay. Yep, we are good to go. And that's it for today. I hope you liked this video, and if you think it was useful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to leave your comments below. You can also subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I see you in the next video.